Hey everyone, welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a closer look at, all sorts of interesting things.
That's right. We really get into the nitty-gritty. And today,
We're talking Grammys,
yes, the Grammys 2025 red carpet fashion specifically
which was a whirlwind. It was
is
crazy.
so much to unpack.
There really was. We've got a ton of articles here from the independent WWD, even a bit from KCAL News,
Yeah.
and everybody's talking about all the bold choices, the sheer moment.
Jaden Smith's hat.
Oh, yes.
We've got to talk about that.
The headwear choices were
Amazing.
interesting, to say the least. But before we even get there, I think the big story here, the trend that we saw everywhere, was sheer.
Yeah, sheer was huge.
Sheer was huge.
Sheer was huge.
So many sheer looks.
Like Bianca Censori, Kanye West's wife. I mean, she really set the internet on fire in that nude look under a fur coat.
And the Independent really went in on that.
Oh, they dissected it. They were all over that. Yes, and it's a great example of how sheer can be so daring and provocative. It's not just about showing skin,
Right.
It's about owning your look and really commanding attention.
And she definitely got attention. But then you've got someone like Madison Beer, who also embraced the sheer trend, but with a totally different vibe.
Totally.
Yeah.
WWD called her Miss Sohee Gown, romantic and lacy.
Yeah, very different.
Yeah, you can do so much with sheer. It can be sexy, it can be romantic, it can be edgy, it can even be vulnerable, It all depends on how it's styled and the attitude that the artist brings to it.
Right. It's like sheer is this blank canvas for self-expression.
Yes.
And this year, the artists really took that and ran with it.
They did, and speaking of interesting, we can't forget Chrissy Teigen, who basically shut down the red carpet in her Christian Siriano gown.
It was sheer.
Hers are architectural.
It was a masterpiece, but not everyone was a fan.
Yeah, The Independent even had some fans questioning the state of fashion after seeing it. I think it's a prime example of pushing boundaries. Chrissy Teigen is known for her bold fashion choices. And this gown was like a testament to her fearless style. It's not going to be for everyone,
Right.
but it certainly got people talking.
That's what fashion is all about, though, right?
Exactly.
Pushing the envelopes, starting those conversations.
Yes, and speaking of pushing the envelope, remember Lady Gaga's leather turtleneck dress with that enormous skirt?
I mean, the Independent had a field day with that one.
Lady Gaga is the queen of making a statement, Love it or hate it, you can't deny that it was memorable.
Memorable is one word for it.
Yes.
But, before we go any further down this glamorous rabbit hole,
Yeah.
I want to remind you to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We've got so many more red carpet looks to unpack, and you won't want to miss a single detail.
Yeah, we're just getting started. And up next, we're going to dive into those looks that went beyond sheer buckle up, because we've got some interesting choices to discuss.
Including Jaden Smith's now infamous headwear.
Oh, yes.
That cap.
That castle is going down in Grammy history.
Stay tuned, folks. This deep dive is about to get really interesting.
All right, so let's move beyond sheer now, because there were some other looks that were really bold on the Grammys red carpet.
Bold is one way to put it.
I mean,
Jaden Smith wearing a black castle on his head.
you know what?
The Independent call it architectural. I really see it.
Fashion can be a form of self-expression.
True.
And sometimes that expression takes unexpected forms,
That's one way to put it.
Maybe he was trying to, convey a sense of grandeur, or maybe he was making a statement about, the impenetrable nature of his artistry. Who knows?
I mean, it's definitely got people talking,
That's true.
which I guess is the point of any bold fashion choice, right?
Yeah.
You want to get people talking. But then you have someone like Jacob Collier who went for a vibrant, multicolored sequin suit.
Right.
And the Independent said it was eye-catching, but was it Grammys appropriate?
I don't know. I think it speaks to a broader trend we're seeing of men embracing bolder colors and patterns on the red carpet.
Yeah.
For a long time, men's fashion was pretty limited to classic suits and muted tones.
Right.
And I think we're seeing a real shift toward more individualistic and playful style choices.
Yeah. And not just with the colors and patterns. I mean,
Yeah.
Teddy Swims, he rocked a tan suit covered in pearls.
Yes.
Independent said it was interesting, but not exactly glamorous.
I love that. Look, I think it's a great example of how fashion can be used to challenge traditional notions of masculinity.
Right.
Pearls have historically been associated with femininity, but he's subverting those expectations and, incorporating them into this traditionally masculine garment.
He's like, pearls can be for everyone.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting about fashion right now. We're seeing people play with gender norms, embrace their individuality and express themselves in ways that were just unimaginable a few years ago.
Yeah, and it's not just the men who are pushing boundaries. I mean, Casey Musgraves, she went for a mix-and-match gold skirt and white tank top.
Right.
The Independent called it casual and wondered if it was a bit too laid back for the Grammys.
Casey Musgraves has always had a very distinct personal style, and I think this look reflects her effortless cool girl vibe.
Yeah.
She's not afraid to go against the grain and choose comfort over what's considered traditionally glamorous.
Speaking of comfort, Billie Eilish went full-on casual black jacket, white button-down pants hat.
Yeah.
The Independent said some fans are disappointed.
Yeah.
But, hey, maybe she just wanted to be comfortable.
Comfort is an interesting factor to consider when it comes to red carpet fashion.
Right.
It really challenges that traditional notion that you have to suffer for style.
Exactly. Who wants to be tugging at a too-tight dress all night when you could be rocking a comfy suit like Billie?
Right.
I mean, it's all about feeling good and looking good.
Exactly.
It's interesting how fashion trends, they kind of cycle back around.
They do.
WWD pointed out that the sheer trend in particular, it seems to be drawing inspiration from, like, 90s supermodel fashion and even that Y2K era.
Yeah, the nostalgia factor's definitely there, but it's never a straight-up repeat, is it? There's always a modern twist.
Right.
What's interesting to me is that it's not just about the aesthetics, it's about the attitudes and the values that those eras represent.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So think about the 90s supermodels, right? They were known for their confidence, their individuality, their unapologetic embrace of sensuality.
Yeah.
And then you have Y2K fashion, which was all about experimentation, pushing boundaries, and just having fun with your look.
So are these artists trying to tap into that same energy with their sheer outfits? Like, are they saying, we're here, we're confident, and we're not afraid to show a little skin?
I think that's definitely part of it, and it's a powerful message, especially today, where there's so much pressure to conform to certain beauty standards.
Right. It's like they're reclaiming their bodies and their sexuality on their own terms.
Exactly. And, this conversation reminds me of something else. We have to acknowledge the effort that the Grammys themselves are putting in to stay relevant and adapt to, a changing world.
Right.
KCAL News highlighted their tribute to the first responders and the victims of the recent wildfires in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that was really powerful.
It was, and it shows that even amidst, all the glitz and the glamour, there's a recognition of the real world and the challenges that people are facing.
It's a balancing act, isn't it? Celebrating music and creativity while also acknowledging, the complexities of our times.
Exactly.
Before we get to our final round of Grammy looks, I want to remind everyone to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We've got so much more fashion to unpack, and you won't want to miss it. Now, back to the red carpet. There were a few looks that really divided opinion, and I'm dying to hear your take on them.
Oh, let's dish. I love a good fashion debate. Who are we talking about?
Okay, so we're back for the final act of our Grammys 2025 red carpet deep dive.
Yeah.
We've seen the sheer, we've seen the bold, but what else happened?
Well, we still have some big names to cover.
That's right, big names and big fashion choices, starting with Kelsea Ballerini, who KCL News caught looking absolutely radiant on the red carpet. She was up for Best Country Duo/Group Performance with Cowboys Cry 2. Did her outfit hit the right note for you?
I think so. I thought it was a really nice blend of classic country and modern edge. The silhouette was familiar, but there were these little details, maybe some intricate embroidery or a daring cut, that kept it from being too predictable.
Speaking of entrances, we've got to talk about Miley Cyrus.
Miley, her style journey has been wild.
It really has, but she always stays true to herself.
Absolutely pushing boundaries, challenging expectations.
Speaking of pushing boundaries, Doechie's Tom Brown gown was incredible. WWD called it a meld of suiting with corsetry.
Right, it was a showstopper. And it's a perfect example of how designers are blurring the lines between masculine and feminine elements. You've got the structure and the power of a suit, but then the sensuality and the form-fitting nature of corsetry.
It's powerful and androgynous.
Yes, and that's a term that we should maybe unpack a little bit.
Please do.
Androgyny in fashion. It's about blending those elements that are typically associated with one gender into clothing that's designed for another.
Right, so it's challenging the idea that clothing has to be strictly male or female.
Exactly. It's about breaking free from those rigid categories and expressing yourself authentically. And, we're seeing that more and more, not just in fashion, but in culture as a whole.
It's about embracing the full spectrum of human expression.
Yes. And speaking of embracing individuality, KCA Lewis was raving about how Glorilla owned the red carpet.
She did. She really did.
Her confidence was palpable.
It's great to see a rising star like her, shine so brightly musically and in her fashion choices.
Absolutely. It sends such a positive message of self-acceptance and empowerment, especially for young women who are finding their own voices and their own styles.
So true. Then we have Kali Uchis, who was nominated for Best Latin Pop Album with Orquídeas. Her
Right.
style is always so unique. What's the story there?
I love Kali Uchis. She often incorporates vintage elements into her looks, but always with a fresh, modern twist, It's like she's curating her own fashion time capsule, pulling inspiration from different eras and making it completely her own.
It reminds me of what we were talking about earlier with the 90s and Y2K trends influencing the sheer looks. It's all about finding those threads of inspiration and kind of weaving them into something new and exciting.
That's it. Fashion is a constant conversation between the past, the present, and the future.
And speaking of the future, we can't forget about Gen Z's reigning style queen, Olivia Rodrigo.
Of course, her look this year definitely had that Gen Z blend of comfort and nostalgia, and maybe even a dash of rebellion.
Yeah, it's a generation that's not afraid to mix and match, to borrow from different decades and subcultures, and ultimately to create a style that's uniquely their own.
I love that.
Before we wrap up, we have to give a shout out to the men who brought their A game to the red carpet. Trevor Noah, our host for the night, looked dapper as always.
He did, and I loved Troye Sivan and his Prada ensemble. It was the perfect mix of tailored and edgy.
It's great to see men embracing fashion as a form of self-expression and taking risks and having fun with it.
Absolutely.
We've covered so much ground in this Grammys deep dive, from the sheer sensation that swept the red carpet to those bold choices that really sparked some debate. What are your final takeaways from this fashion spectacle?
I think more than anything, this year's Grammys fashion reflects a culture that's embracing individuality and diversity and self-expression. It's about breaking free from those old limiting rules and using fashion as a tool to communicate who you are, what you believe in, and what makes you unique.
I couldn't agree more. And hey, even if some of those choices left us scratching our heads, it's those conversations they spark that make these events so fascinating.
It's all part of the fun. And who knows what next year's Grammys red carpet will bring. One thing's for sure, we'll be here to deep dive into all the fashion fabulousness.
That's right. We will. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more insightful deep dives into the world's most interesting topics. We'll see you next time for another fashion adventure.